Hello everybody, Joe Bagadones here. Welcome back for another episode of Mihoyo. Been a little bit since I recorded. It wasn't my game plan to take this long to get the next episode out, but it is what it is. Work this weekend sucked. Awful. No energy after my shifts to do anything. Even my 8-hour shift, it was just all training in like fucking full-on chem gear for the entire shift, which, ooh man, that fucking really takes it out of you. No energy there. I'm like, even on my 12-hour shifts too, it's like, went into work, it's like, all right, cool, fucking on the line, working on jets the entire, like, fucking 24 hours of those days, combined, 2 12-hour shifts, 24 hours, not including my lunches, which, I took a 30-minute lunch because I was so busy, and then today was not good. I was supposed to have today off because I worked the holiday last weekend, federal holiday, and because I'm the weekend shift, we work when everyone else gets a day off, so I was supposed to get it today, which I kind of did, but woke up at like 2 a.m., fumbled around for a bit, just being tired, made some coffee, had a couple sips, had a beer to go with it because it's my day off. Haha, I'm gonna have a beer as soon as I wake up, and then I get a phone call saying, "Hey, we need you to come in to do some stuff." I'm like, So then I went in on my supposed day off for a couple hours to do stuff. Now here I am at almost 6 a.m. Fantastic. Smoked a bunch. Because I was upset and didn't want to go into work with my mouth smelling of beer, so I smoked my pipe a bunch on the drive-in, smoked when I was working, then I came back, smoked again because I was upset that I had to come into my day off and was just grumbly, and I was doing that to vent. So now my throat is a little scorched, a little dry from all the smoke, and I have my half pot of coffee that's been here for the entire night. Can't drink that, it's ice cold. And also if I drink that, the caffeine high and the nicotine high will probably make me fucking vomit. So not gonna do that. So I'm just gonna have another beer. A nice, oh god, what is this? Leinenkugel? Berry Weiss? It's like a blackberry beer lager thing. It's okay. It's fine. Like, it tastes more of like juice than beer, but it has like the bitterness of a beer and like the tartness of the blackberry. It's an interesting combo. Not particularly my favorite, but it's perfectly serviceable. So it's got a twist off cap because that's how it's a women's drink. I was struggling to get the first cap off the bottle I got because I'm like, man, why isn't my bottle opener catching like good? And then I got it off and I saw the threads and I'm like, oh, that would be why. Anyway, you're not here to listen to me rant and ramble about my night and how my life sucks, and how this video is going up late because it's like an hour to the time where it's usually uploaded, and I'm still in the process of making it. It just started, not even 5 minutes in. But that 3.5 minutes there is too long for me to ramble. Moving on. His eyelids snapped open. At last, Sojuro woke from his long slumber. Lying on his back, he gazed up at the stars. The trees around him created a porthole into space. Despite seeing all this for the first time, he felt an uncomfortable sense of deja vu. So many questions. What had happened before he fell asleep? Why had he been sleeping? Everything was just so hazy. It's like he had walked out of the door 1 minute, then woken up in bed the next. With so many thoughts clouding his mind, he could barely recall his own name. All he could remember was a girl he'd never seen before, and something thin around his neck.
Shizuki-kun.
The voice, quiet but clear, belonged to the girl named Alice Kuronji, who was at his side.
そういえば、そうだった。
Yeah, how far did you, reverse time on him? He sat up, mumbling incoherently. Same, bro. The black-clad girl knelt next to him.
花だ。
A little odd for, December, he said, paying no mind to Alice. Under the blue moonlight, spring flowers swayed, surrounded by dead trees and snow. Against the curtain of night, white petals danced in the breeze like butterflies. Staring long and hard at that spectacle, Sojuro suddenly raised his fingers to his neck. He moved carefully, like he was touching a wound. Then, gradually, he began squeezing. Harder, harder.
しずきくん、
The voice of the girl beside him brought him back to
せっ
reality.
かく戻れたのに。また行くの？
Yeah, no fucking choking yourself. She sounded both sad and reproachful. But Sojuro did not understand why. Seeing the uncharacteristic concern in her eyes snapped him to his senses.
行くってどこに？
His fingers fell away from his neck. Without answering, she blankly looked to the sky. Though there was only the infinite darkness of space.
まあいいや。それより俺は何をしてたんだろ
I don't know, having your guts splayed out all over the ground.
う。なんか変だ。ごちゃごちゃしてる。
Sojuro tilted his head in confusion. Alice observed him motionlessly. This bewildered boy was a far cry from the one that made a short work of a werewolf. Then again, this was Sojuro. As she stared at him, she realized that she did not have an answer he could understand. So she tried asking a question. The same question she had asked him repeatedly as he slept, but eventually gave up expecting a response to.
今までしずきくんは何をしていたの？
Her quiet question was spoken like an enthralling spell of magecraft. That spell seemed to work, and Sojuro sank into a sea of memories. Atop the bright white hill, they quietly sat for a while, like siblings.
誰かの声が聞こえた気がする。何かを聞いているようだった。けど自分は最後まで一言も返せなかった。
Though consumed by the darkness of death, you'd still vaguely recall the girl's question. He was not aware that he had died, but it seemed a fragment of time remained from when he had been with her. Sojoro's expression darkened, filled with regret. Looking at his profile, Alice pressed him further.
それで欲しいものは見つかった？
Remembering that someone had asked him questions, he gave a slight nod.
ああ、そうだった。けれどね、アリス。そんなものは見つからないって思っていたんだ。うん。ずっとそう思っていた。
The regret in his voice was accompanied by a hint of strength. Lowering his gaze, Sojuro saw a white flower garden that looked like something from the afterlife. It shone brightly, captivating him.
思い出した。青子の前でざっくり言ったんだっけ。なのに生きているのはどういうことなんだ。
You got better. Sojuro said, prodding his body curiously. His arms were their old selves again, but what of Aoko? He turned towards Alice for an answer, who was set among the flowers looking sullen.
巻き戻されたのよ、しずきくんは。こ
Yeah,
の
like a
風景
VHS
も
tape.
本来はあなたの記憶だけど、わからない。
Alice seemed to be speaking in riddles.
俺の記憶って、その割には知らないところなんだけど。
今しずきくんの時間は青子に使われているから、それが戻されるまで思い出すことはないわ。
Interesting mechanics to the magic. She answered ominously as she cast her gaze over the flower garden.
でもこれが消えてしまうのは残念ね。
Yeah, it's pretty.
元に戻れば思い返せるのは私だけなのに。
Looking at the white blossoms, she smiled momentarily.
おう。
Her words only confused him further, saying,
アリス、君答える気がないんだろ
Yeah, fucking plot dump us. He said dejectedly, prompting Alice to face him. What emotions lay inside those deep eyes?
意味のない話だけど聞きたい？
Eh, sure.
う。聞きたい。アリスが教えてくれるなら なおさらだ。
Sojuro nodded enthusiastically, while Alice took a deep breath and closed her eyes. When she spoke in a caring tone as she was capable of.
結論だけ言うと、あなたは一度死んで生き返ったの。しずきくんがトウコさんに殺されてから、青子が目を覚ますまでの5分間分の時間を巻き戻して、その時あなたは10年近い年月を青子に使われた。
Neat.
二人とも肉体年齢は変わってないから、中の時間だけ持っていったんでしょうね。だから今この景色を懐かしく思えるのは青子だけ。そして
Huh. And once the time exchange was over, neither Aoko nor Sojuro would remember what happened during these moments. When Aoko used someone else to channel her true magic, it did not affect her alone. If she had rewound time for only herself, the temporal inconsistencies would form part of her own experience. However, this was proper time travel. The inconsistencies would be corrected. When the magic ended, both Aoko's memories of this place and Sojuro's unfamiliarity with it would be corrected. This miracle would become unrealized. Only the observers would remember this brilliant white sea of flowers, Alice and Toko.
時間を持っていく?
Sojuro asked, his head tilted even farther at Alice's general explanation. She recalled how Aoko said that if you gave Sojuro a roundabout answer, he would stop asking questions, even if he did not comprehend it.
しずきくんを生き返らせる方法はなかったから、命の復元より死そのものの回避を青子は試みたのよ。
She loaded your save file, so that way you'd be like that death never happened.
まだ青子には無理なのか、それとも今回もひよったのか。大きな操作は避けて小さな操作、自分とあなただけの交換にとどめたようね。あなたは今5分間だけ時間を飛んだことになるわ。
Cool.
仮に遠い未来、この時間を検索できる人がいたとしても、あなただけは誰にも見つけられない。だって
Outside the
時間
temporal
軸の
flow.
上にいなかったんですもの。そして同時に青子は自分の時間を上乗せするためにあなたから時間を借り受けた。多分幼年期の時間でしょうね。個人の時間操作は忘却している部分の方が楽だと聞くし。
Yeah, this one's a little easier to understand.
しずきくん、
Should I slow down? Alice asked with her eyes. All Sojuro could do was nod.
つまり2つの奇跡を、あなたの体の巻き戻しと自分の体の早送りね。
Equivalent exchange.
しずきくんの時間に介入する際、ついでに10年分の時間を借り受けて未来の自分を持ってきた。だから今トウコさんを殺そうとしているのは27歳分の時間を持った青崎青子ということになるわ。
What on earth was Alice talking about? Sojuro's expression gave away his thoughts, though the part about Toko made him furrow his brow.
トウコさんを殺すって青子が?
Mage things.
もう終わってるでしょうけど。
As soon as Alice answered, Sojuro sped off. Kicking up white petals behind him as he ran, the brave boy who defeated a werewolf was back. Alice watched him go. On a snowy night, the same boy ran down Shiro Inuzuka Hill for her too. Sojuro entered the old school building. Lights flashed and sounds of destruction exploded around him, threatening to turn the area into a burial ground. Still, he remained focused.
ほら、悪いけれどやっぱり無駄だったわ。
Her words only reached the white flowers around her. Aoko knew Sojuro too well, so she wanted Alice to stop him. If he tried to interfere in the battle against Toko, she could not protect him this time. But it was too late to celebrate Aoko's judgment now. The girl in black had no intention of going after him. She simply sat for a while, gazing forlornly at the transient flower garden. Yeah, Toko, I think you're pretty outclassed here. A storm of magic bullets struck down a hail of lightning blades. Mage's workshop was their home base and last line of defense. It featured an abundance of defensive spells designed to cut down brazen challengers and thieves. The old school building was no exception, painstakingly rigged by the puppet master and rune mage, Toko Aozaki. A reflection of her bizarre obsessions, the workshop was set to indiscriminately destroy any intruders. Toko complained as she ran down the hallway, activating her traps along the way, but nothing seemed to work. None of the runes, regardless of their quality or quantity, could slow her sister down. Her reaction speed and ability to predict attacks could only be described as transcendent? Okay. Even magic bolts she fired from both her arms were too much, destroying the runes and very walls that housed them. Well, you're one to talk. As she spat out her words, the ceiling opened, increasing the pressure from the runes. Invisible walls popped up in the hallway. Aoko stopped and swung her right leg upwards. Cool. Straight towards the ceiling. Her foot cut through the thick air like a knife through butter, shattering the ceiling and the runes along with it. Yeah, you didn't need to cut the guy in half. That's what we're mad about? Also, says the one, smashing the floor and ceiling and the walls. The wooden boards along the hallway that had withstood decades of wind and snow were now destroyed. Aoko charged forward. The chaos was inevitable. While Toko's runes cursed living creatures, Ako's magic bullets destroyed all without prejudice. I mean, if he gets the job done. I mean, I can see the similarity. Toko would do anything to change her blood, but there were more pressing matters at hand. The girl rushing her now was not the sister she remembered, but rather a more complete version of her. Toko could not afford to let her guard down for a second. But localized time travel. Toko didn't believe there was, that was the true nature of Aoko's magic. Aoko's transformation had to be a mere byproduct of true magic. She couldn't make heads or tails out of the depths even with Aoko having achieved it. At the very least, it was not so simple a miracle. After all, the concept of time travel was already made possible through the second magic. Record manipulation, revision of possibilities, and so forth involved the operation of parallel worlds. So, there was no way that could be the fifth magic. No, let's not bring Zelrich into this. They're alone. Yep, just being borrowed. That made sense. There was a bias, but the amount of time on an axis had not been changed. But Aoko stopped in her tracks. Toko had took aim at Aoko's glaring oversight. Ozaki magic and Aoko's humanity were inconsistent.
前がしたことは一時だけの気休めか。
The magic crest on Toko's back began to demonstrate their true worth. Drawing upon the magical energy stored in the crest, she materialized her largest trap yet in the hallway.
あるいはより罪深い暴虐ということだ。
3 rune stones appeared. Their scale and level of magical energy were wildly different from the other runes. Created by Toko herself at the Mages Association, they were replicas of one of the lost primordial runes created by a Nordic giant. The 3 thin crystalline lenses amplified her carved runes tens of millions of times. They rendered projectiles like magic bullets ineffective. Even if Aoko's magical output far exceeded Toko's, these giant slabs were several times more powerful still. Aoko's signature magecraft could only release magical energy, so she had no way to defend or evade the attack. It always just boils down to just fucking firing beams at the end, doesn't it? Pushing herself on, Aoko took a deep breath of resolve. Instead of defending or dodging, she went low and charged into the rune storm.
Neat.
Infuriated by the realization, Toko set her magic crest to full power. Through repeated, second-long bursts of time travel, Aoko was able to avoid the runes completely. She was either sending the attack's impact to a different time, or layering several thousands of herself on top of one another. Whatever. No way she could keep up that kind of magical energy output. Aoko kicked the crystal slab to pieces. 2 remained. Distance, 30 feet. Toko had 10 seconds of magical energy left. That was all she needed. Aoko, on the other hand, would stop now if she had any common sense as a mage. She couldn't continue breaking the rules for much longer. Then again, time travel itself was breaking the rules.
Aoko!
Once again, Aoko used the same technique. Toko's suspicion turned into white-hot hatred. She couldn't care less about her time travel formula. It was the amount of magical energy she had. Where was she pulling the necessary energy to jump through time for so long? It was the death of Sojuro Suzuki. If she had brought him back 5 minutes to when he was still alive, where would those 5 minutes go? Ako's magic wasn't using parallel worlds to change this one. She had only rewound Sojuro's 5 minutes. Then, logically, he'd return to being a corpse as soon as the magic ended. Time travel that didn't change the world when it changed the past. Therefore, if she wanted to save him, she had to either truly resurrect him, or send those 5 minutes of reality somewhere far away without returning them. Aoko showed no sign of slowing. From behind her crystal barrier, Toko glared at Aoko with disdain. I don't know, just fucking tossed it at the end of time or whatever. You know, didn't get rid of it, it's just, you know, just boop. You know, if he fucking lives his whole life and then dies again, it doesn't matter if his, you know, previous death is, you know, fucking way after that. Man's already dead. 15 feet to go. Faced with such madness, Toko wanted to cover her eyes. She put the dead of the present into the distant future? Time paradox would have been more humane. Such an enormous, haphazard consumption of heat couldn't be allowed. After all, time travel alone required a massive amount of energy. Magical energy was required to bring things from somewhere else. At the same time, losing something that existed here consumed an incredible amount of energy. And what about the magical energy used for cooling? Either fell out of equilibrium, it would mean total chaos. The distortion caused by her magic would come to affect this entire sector of space.
バカここに極まったな。
No one said she was smart.
何千億年後に来る宇宙の死滅、人類の行く末に待つデッドエンドにさらなる負債を押し付ける気か。この星の頭上に隕石を作っているようなものだぞ。
Well, what does it matter if it, like, never
お前の
falls?
重みでこの星を押しつぶす気か。
The last comment made Aoko's eyes widen. Her every step exerted such force it broke the floorboards beneath her.
その時はその時で今度は負債を過去に送ってやるわよ。それなら文句ないんでしょ。歪みに潰されるのは過去だけなんだから。
それで解決したつもりか。
Well, yeah, the past has already happened. It doesn't matter what happens to it.
現在が確定している以上、過去を消滅させてもいいと。
Sure.
それでいいのは私たちだけだ。問題の総量、宇宙の負債はどうする？
Who cares? Exactly. Even if the universe were closed, or the present were still expanding, the absurd increase in heat consumption would become uncontrollable. That which waits for the end of infinite expansion, infinite consumption, and infinite growth is a future without hope. The nothingness before creation. Eventually, the universe would burn up.
青崎の魔法はその結末をより確かなものにするだけだ。その責任をお前は。
言われなくても分かってる。責任なんて私が生きてる間に何とかするわよ。
Yep, just one more thing on the docket. 5 feet to go. Rune Blast, now carrying all of Toko's hatred, focused into a scorching hot laser beam. Her body being torn into by the intense heat, and her emotions raging, Aoko drove her foot into the ground.
責任を取ると言ったな。では、その具体案は？
We'll figure it out
そ
later.
んなのこれから考えるに決まってるでしょ。
You're thinking too hard, Toko.
お前は最悪だ。
Toko's last defense was shattered. Close enough to connect, the two mages unleashed their magecraft. Red runes, blue ether. In a cascade of magic bullets, Toko Ozaki's crests were torn to pieces, and so was Toko herself. So, you gonna take the L with grace, or...? It was just as Alice said. By the time Sojuro arrived, it was already over. The old school buildings of wooden boards had survived the elements for decades, but they were not ready for a mage duel. The entrance door hung off its hinges. The floorboards groaned. The stairs were ready to collapse underfoot. Toko's escape and Aoko's pursuit had left a trail of destruction leading all the way to the second floor. The chaos continued to the end of the hallway, by the stairs to the third floor. Toko sat in a heap with her back against the wall. Despite her injuries, she kept her eyes firmly on Aoko. She was bleeding internally and had multiple broken bones. She would not be moving anytime soon. I was about to say, oh, that's not that big a deal, fucking mages are tough, but, she doesn't have the crest, so, it's all on her to fucking fix herself up. Possibly damaged by Aoko's flying kick, her mystic eyes had ruptured from within, closing them indefinitely. Despite her battered and broken body, She was still breathing steadily, a testament to her stubbornness. Before her stood Aoko, staring down at her, uninjured.
屋上までは持つと思っていたんだが。
And do what? Just think of a plan on your way up there. Toko was not trying to be facetious. She sounded genuinely disappointed. Aoko responded with a cold glare. Her azure eyes had not changed one bit. They were callous as ever, yet undeniably beautiful. From where she stood, Aoko held her hand out towards Toko. Like a hunter about to put a wounded prey out of its misery. The victor was decided. The mage came to steal land and got a death sentence for her trouble. The silence was disquieting. Moonlight peered through the demolished ceiling, illuminating the two sisters within its stare. The utterly mad sibling squabble was over. Now the fireworks were finished, and the cold wind had returned to claim the old school building.
何か言い残すことはある？
Ako's voice cut through the silence. Toko thought for a moment, before lightly patting her coat pocket. Nothing. She frowned.
最後に一服と思ったが、あいにくお前を待っている間に吸い切ってしまってね。
Yeah,
日本の
I
タ
don't
バ
like
コはうま
cigarettes.
すぎていけない。
Aoko gave a small nod.
なかなか常人には真似できない遺言だったわ。
Yeah, well, they rarely are.
待て待て。いくら私でも遺言まで謎かけをする気はないよ。お望み。
Toko's voice was laden with sarcasm, but not hostility or hatred. Perhaps her vendetta was not directed at Aoko herself, but rather a product of two sisters born into a mage family.
青崎の魔法が時間旅行に端を発するものとは思わなかった。まだ事情がありそうだが、当事者ではない私には何ともね。ボンプにはわからない悩みだ。せいぜい大事に付き合っていけばいいさ。しかし10年経ってもそれでは先が思いやられる。アリスは何をしていたんだか。
アリスにしてはよく付き合ってくれた方よ。魔術師としてはいつまでも半人前っていうのが彼女の結論。
Yeah, your human side is too soft.
けどまあ、そうね。あの狼とならいい勝負をしたんじゃない？
あれはダメだ。敗北を知ってしまった。もう完全じゃない。
Pecking order has been established.
半人前に値で勝っていようが、魔法の前には得意性を見失うだろう。ところで、アオコ、お前の魔法とやらは手段か、それとも結果か。
What do you mean? Toko wanted to know if it came before or came after. Did Aoko need magic to get where she needed to go? Or did she obtain magic as a result of reaching that place? Okay.
あとよ。私は扉の前で尻尾を巻いたから、ジジイの思惑なんて知らないけど。
第一魔法と同じ経緯か。ますます業が深い。第2から第4はその場所へ到達するために生み出されたものと聞く。同族嫌悪は世の常だ。いずれ第一と食い合わなければいいのだがね。
Let's please not bring more magicians into this.
しかし扉ときたか。魔法の継承とはパスの継承のようだな。ではやはりここにユミルの入り口があると。
北欧かぶれのあなたにとってはね。私にとってはアカシャの門と言えるものよ。
Okay.
最初からそれを狙っていたんでしょ、あなたは。
That name rings a little more familiar. Toko used every ounce of strength she could find to nod.
望めば手に入るというのに何代も待つのは嫌だったんだ。そう、青崎に対する復讐心は それには優先されなかった。まあ全ては終わったことだ。もう語る必要はない。最後に根源に触れた感想が聞きたいな。
Toko spoke after taking a deep breath. Her last words showed no trace of hatred. Aoko remained silent, and she began raising her right hand up high. She recalled her grandfather's orders. The source of true magic. Revealing one's knowledge or impressions of the root was strictly forbidden. But this was her sister's dying wish. Maybe it'd be okay? The conversation would end the moment she brought her arm down. Then, the rotting shell of a building would become her sibling's tomb. What harm could it do? It's not like she planned to follow her grandfather's rules anyway.
白状するとね、姉さん。
Ako's voice carried through the blue hallway.
正直、全然わからなかったわ。
Understandable, you know, the fucking origin of everything. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Aoko gave a blunt reply and brought her arm down like a bolt of lightning. Or at least, she tried to. Her arm wouldn't listen to her. It wouldn't budge.
何のつもり？
Cursing Alice, Aoko spat her question out with venom. Sojuro materialized from behind, taking hold of her raised arm. Though unable to express it, Toko was shocked to see him too.
で、話して。
Without looking at him, or even at her restrained hand, Aoko spoke sternly, her eyes forward. Come to think of it, at the amusement park, he appeared out of nowhere to protect her from that puppet.
聞こえなかった。二度はないわよ。
She was not bluffing. If he interfered, even he would be given no mercy. I've decided to let you live. It would go against that promise, but she should know better. But he should know better. Even so, he maintained his grip on her arm.
いい加減に。
As Aoko turned around, the words told caught in her throat. She immediately regretted looking at him. She saw herself in his expression. Mournful sadness, judgmental anger. His conflicted emotions spoke of her own internal struggle. Voicelessly, quietly, without volition. Rustic gray eyes, questioning a deep sin.
言いたいことがあるならはっきり口にしなさい。それができないなら消えて。
Sojuro gently released Aoko's arm as she maintained her resolve. They locked eyes, neither friend nor foe. Their bitterness clashed without words. Then suddenly,
人殺しはいけないことだ。
if it's over, then, you know, okay, cool. Toko, she learned her lesson. She's given up on fucking with you. All's well that ends well. Sojuro stated in that matter-of-fact way of his with which Aoko became all too familiar. His words were empty, trite even. And yet, given her current state, they reached her. Though she would soon forget the fragments of Sojuro's memories, they made her painfully aware of how he felt. Still, she could not agree with him. Come back to bite her. If she let Toko go now, her sister would come for her again. She had already made 2 attempts on her life. Aoko did not have it in her to forgive her sister for what she had done. Above all, just as Toko said, if Aoko did not change, she would be a novice forever. She had not even won her first mage battle yet. And she knew putting down a blood relative would require even more conviction. Nevertheless, his words echoed over and over in her heart. Murder is wrong. Such a childish phrase. but the earnestness with which he had said it was enough to make her sick. Resisting, Aoko glowered. Glowered? Okay. Glowered at Sojuro.
だから殺されたくせにその相手までかばうっていうのあんたは。
Well, he's not dead anymore,
元気になっ
so
たら懲りずにやってくる
like it never
殺人鬼
happens.
が相手でも見逃してやれっていうの。
まさかそこまで行ったら聖者だ。
But he would probably still let her go. Did not think that Toko would change. He also did not care to rationalize her actions based on her life. He was simply thankful. Thankful that this person before him was still alive. You seem pretty damn saintly to me. That was what had made Aoko so angry. His overwhelming innocence and self-righteousness enraged her, like the Hall of Mirrors was happening all over again. The only difference was now she knew why he was acting like this. It was because she had taken in a part of him. He took a step forward, passing her by, saying words he knew he should not.
仕返しなら殺された人間がやるのが筋だろう。
Okay.
君を止められないのは分かってる。だから青崎がやるぐらいなら俺がやる。
Fair. It was difficult to discern who was the more pathetic in all this. Toko, who had been staring at them the whole time, closed her other eye as if drifting off to
ご
sleep.
めんなさい、トウコさん。
Knowing her fate, Toko dropped her head as best she could as he walked towards her.
そうだな。君にはそれもいいかもしれない。
Yeah, well, what goes around comes around.
今は特殊な状況だから、冷めた後に君がどれほど悔やむことになるか想像もできない。ただ、それで君の停滞は終わるだろう。晴れてみそぎ落としというわけだ。純粋に祝福してあげられる。気に食わないのは、それを決意させたのが私ではなかったということぐらいか。
Well, you helped. She knew that Sojuro could not understand. Words hanging in the air, she closed her lips tightly. Then, weakly stuck out her slender neck. Sojuro took another step forward. Before he could do anything, Aoko moved. Spinning in front of Sojuro, she cut off her magical energy and swung her hand as hard as she could. The sound of her slapping his face echoed throughout the hall, along with his staggering steps.
青崎。
Well, violent as ever.
卑怯者。
Tears of anger welling in her eyes, Aoko turned her back to Sojuro, sulking as though she would kill him as soon as she looked at him again.
他人の記憶を取り込んだ代償か。引きずられたな、青子。
Well, that's one way to come to a complete understanding of someone.
そうよ。自分の意志を人に曲げられるのがこんなに悔しいなんて知らなかった。
That was about all Aoko could mutter in response. The corners of Toko's lips curled into a grin.
何がおかしいのよ、あなた。
いや、お前にも人並みの情けがあるとは思っていなくてね。バカ呼ばわりは訂正しておくよ。他人の理想を背負うのに怯えるなんて。
He's a charm point.
10年経っても可愛いじゃないか。
あんたね。
そう睨むな。今のは心からの賛辞だ。で、私をどうする？彼に殺させるか、それとも見逃すか？
仕方ないでしょ。あなたの言う通り、これが何よりの代償だったんだから。
Aoko said begrudgingly, shooting Sojuro a sideways glance. He seemed to have recovered from the slap, and his usual absent-minded look had returned. may have had no memories of his past, but his morals and values were too deep to be erased. Sojuro was trying to violate those. It would eat away at him forever. And he would be doing it not for himself, but for Aoko. Aoko understood this all too well now. The moment he said he would do it was the moment he'd lost. Not stopping him would be no different than watching him die. And she would probably lose something important inside herself. Aoko did not want that to happen.
青崎、やっぱりその自分の受けた傷は自分で返さないと気が済まない性格か？
Aoko ignored Sojuro, who seemed to have gotten the wrong idea. Instead, she directed her scowl at Toko, who still lay collapsed in front of her.
わかったわよ。トコ、今回は見逃してあげる。
Yep, everyone gets one mulligan.
けど、ただで帰れるとは思ってないわよね。
Toko scowled at her little sister, standing smugly over her.
祖父のところに突き出すのならここで引導を渡してくれ。
まさか、私もあの人には会いたくないもの。あなたにはこのまま出て行ってもらうわ。邪魔もしないし、教会に届けも出さない。
Yeah, we'll just pretend this never happened.
律子は私が言い含めておくから、今回の件は私たちだけの秘密よ。
Just a little sibling scuffle. Nothing to, ruffle some feathers over. Toko's brow creased further. There had to be a catch.
青子、何を企んでいる？
別に。その代わりに呪いをプレゼントしようと思って。今まで散々ガンド食らってきたし、おあいこでしょ？
Still gotta take your lumps nonetheless.
まあ、私のはちょっと強力だけど。今後この土地に入ろうものなら、マダガスカルガエルになってもらうわ。
Smiling as if they just arranged to eat Chinese food tomorrow night, Aoko walked towards Toko.
待て、なんでそういうものだけ習得してるんだ、お前は。
そりゃ師匠がアリスだもの。偏るのは当然でしょ？
Well, that does seem like something that'd be in her repertoire. The elder Ozaki's sister's brow knitted so hard it could have produced a sweater. Perhaps this was why her sister would stay a novice forever.
宗十郎、席外して。覗き見が趣味なら別に見ていってもいいけど。
Oh, hell yeah. As she spoke, she began removing her sister's overcoat. The uncomfortable look in Toko's eyes compared to the strangely cheerful one on Aoko's caused Sojuro to hesitate. Was it really okay to leave the two of them alone? Eventually, he nodded. Now, this was just a weird game between sisters.
覗き見は確かにいい趣味じゃないな。
Muttering more to himself than anything, he ducked into an empty classroom.
なんだそのブサイクで悪趣味な術式は。センスがないにも程がある。お前本当に私の妹か？
ええ、この通り、芸術的才能は全部姉貴に持っていかれた哀れな妹でして。嘆くなら自分の天才性を嘆きなさい。どうか？
Down the cold, dilapidated hallway, cries of sadness, joy, and anguish rang out. Well, that was strange. Outside, the fully bloomed white flower petals floated one by one into the night. Standing among the ballet of petals, Alice gazed up at the sky. The blossoms gathered into a cloud, then slowly vanished, as though falling asleep. Soon, not a single flower would remain, and the clearing would return to a snowy tundra. The magic had ended. In a matter of minutes, the past would return to its rightful place. Along with it, the time shared between the boy and the girl. The old school building was still. Alice embraced the silence and patiently waited. After a while, Sojuro emerged from the building, and Alice released a puff of white breath. A small sigh of relief. It was over. Sojuro approached, carrying Aoko, cradling her in his arms. Was she asleep? Her eyes were closed and she seemed peaceful. Her hair and body Her hair and limp body dangled like a silk drape. She looked just like Sleeping Beauty.
待っていてくれたんだ、アリス。
He said, holding Aoko with little effort. Alice nodded.
トウコさんはどうなったの？
いや、よくわからないけど、トウコさんは帰ったよ。
Yeah, she scampered off into some hole.
青崎が言うには、そう簡単に解除できない呪いをかけたから、向こう10年は三崎市には入ってこれないって。その後、トウコさんが尻尾を巻くのを仁王立ちで見届けて、見えなくなったらそのまま倒れたんだ。
Alice's response was brief, as if she was wondering if things were really so simple. She seemed more concerned about Toko than Aoko, which made Sojuro concerned that Alice and Aoko's relationship. Which made Sojuro concerned more about Alice and Aoko's relationship more than anything. Words are hard.
それはともかくとして、青子はどうなっているんだろう。
He asked nonchalantly as he looked at Aoko breathing deep in her sleep.
矛盾と清純を合わせているのね。彼女の時間は今の時間とは異なってしまったから。はぐる
Sojuro nodded in understanding, very clearly still not comprehending a word Alice had just said.
なんか拍子抜けしたよ。結局、トウコさんと青崎、どっちが勝ったのかよくつかめない。
It doesn't matter.
そうね。魔術師の争いには明確な点数はつけられないから。どちらが強いかで勝負はつかないわ。
Everyone walked away mostly in one piece, you know. Chalk that up as a win.
トウコさんの大目的が青崎の魔法の解明なら、魔法を使わされた時点で青子の負けよ。その後のいざこざは凱旋する勝者を夜道で襲ったようなものだし。
Alice said as she turned her sights to the forest. Even Sojuro could tell that was Alice's way of saying, let's go home.
そうだね。青崎もアリスもこのままじゃ風邪をひく。ああ、それと青崎がトウコさんに呪いをかけるとき何かしてたんだけど。
Sojuro trailed off, hoping Alice would tell him what it was, but a stony and somewhat affected gaze was her response.
見たの？しずきくん。
No, he ducked away.
いや、青崎が出てけって。
そう。それで青子はどんな呪いをかけたの？
カエルがどうとか。
Sojuro's explanation made Alice's expression darken. Aoko was still a very long way from learning any sort of polymorph spells.
そう。
Her thoughts prevented her from finishing the sentence. In actuality, it was perfectly within Aoko's abilities considering where she was in time at that moment. As Aoko had said, Toko would not be able to dispel the curse for 10 years. And the Aoko of this time had not the ability to use such a curse, which meant Toko did not have anyone to rebound the curse to. No matter how much research dispelling powerful curses, she could not do it with the Aoko of this lifetime, of this
青子が
timeline.
トウコさんにつけたのは切り傷ぐらいだから、しずきくんが心配するようなことはないわ。
Sure, we'll not think too hard about it.
青子にしては随分と生ぬるい処置だけど。
After her slightly unsettling remark, Alice quietly began to walk. Sojuro followed her, Aoko in his arms. Together, they left the clearing and moved into the forest. As they did, Sojuro abruptly froze.
しずきくん。
He looked back towards the old school building's field with a strange expression. The memory's coming back now? Was it homesickness he felt? Though this was only his second time seeing it, he had a nostalgic feeling, like he would never be back. He looked like a child saying goodbye to an old toy that was to be thrown away. Seeing his expression, Alice felt a hint of sympathy and chided herself.
あの荒れ地がどうかした？
She asked him, watching the flowery garden fade into a snowy field. Sojuro shook his head.
なんとなく知っている場所に似てる気がして。おかしいな。やってきた時はそんな気はしなかったのに。
He stood staring at the tundra for what seemed like an eternity, reluctant to leave. If she left him there, he would still be gazing at it by morning, probably even longer. But there was no point in doing that. In the end, Alice was the only one who'd remembered that beautiful scenery he yearned for.
ここはその場所にそんなに似てる？
全然似てない。面影すら皆無だ。
ならそれは気の迷いよ。
Sojuro nodded at Alice's harsh conclusion. He smiled slightly, deciding it was pointless to want something that did not exist.
そうだね。多分幻を見ていたんだ。あれは一度幸福だった時の夢だった。
Severing the ties that bound him, Sojuro turned his back from the snowy clearing, away from the unfamiliar yet familiar place where he had known happiness.
さあ、早く帰ろう。青崎は重いし、体も疲れてる。洋館に着いたらあったかいお茶を入れよう、アリス。
Sojuro spoke her name with a smile. Her heart skipped a beat. Since when did he start saying her name so casually like that? Somehow she managed to nod before beginning to walk again. As he moved away from her, she asked a small question to his back.
重いって私より。
I mean, probably. She does more, like, physical work and probably has more muscle mass than you. Aoko was a bit taller than Alice, so naturally she would weigh more, but Alice wanted to hear him say it anyway. Not one to disappoint, Sojuro answered without missing a beat.
ああ、数値的に言うのなら、アリスより10キロ増しぐらい。
そう。青子が聞いてたら大変ね。
Judging by Alice's tone, she was probably going to tell Aoko later.
意地が悪いな、アリスも。それに、さっきのは本人の名誉のために死者誤入してたんだぞ、一応。
Oh. His attempts at being kind had likely drawn him closer to his deathbed.
ダメかな。
No, this was never a can of worms you should have opened. He asked nervously. Alice could not help but crack a smile at his innocence. However, she was not used to smiling in front of others, so she turned away and walked into the woods. From Sojuro's perspective, she was storming off in a mood.
なんだ。友達の悪口で怒るなんて。やっぱり仲はいいんじゃないか、青崎。
Sure, let's go with that explanation. Sojuro rushed to catch up with Alice, gently carrying Aoko along the way. Though the prince lacked the courage to kiss the sleeping princess, he had at least saved her and was bringing her back to her castle. Despite what he had been through, he did not look like your typical hero. Still, in this story at least, he most certainly was. He's a good rock. A moral anchor. Six days passed, the weather in that time sunny and clear. Well, goodbye, all the snow on the ground. First came to Sojuro's attention when he was resting with Alice after spending all day cleaning.
宗十郎、今日ぐらいはバイト休みでしょ？
Aoko asked him in her usual manner immediately upon entering the drawing room. It was already nighttime, approaching 9 o'clock. The afternoon's sunny weather had changed abruptly, and thick clouds were visible out the window. Awoken from his nonchalant daydreaming, Sojuro tilted his head to the side and replied calmly.
休みだけど、どうして？
これから実家に戻るから用意しておいて。
Huh? Sojuro's peaceful expression had grown tense the moment she appeared. Not sure of what any of this had to do with him, he stole a glance at Alice, who was seated across from him. However, she looked surprised as well, her eyes widening ever so slightly as she studied the other two.
用意って何の?
He replied timidly, struggling to hide his bitterness at Aoko for waiting until the cleaning was finished before deciding to show up.
用意は用意よ。1時間ぐらい歩く山の上だから寒くない格好をしろって言ってるの。
What, fucking fully introducing you into the fold? Sojuro's expression only grew darker. The way she spoke made it sound like
しずきくんを連れて行くの。
Alice spoke up before Sojuro himself could manage to say anything, or are you just going home to get some shit and you need someone to carry it? Aoko brusquely asked if there was a problem.
私だってあんなとこに行きたくないわよ。けど今日ぐらいは顔を出せってうるさいから本当に顔だけ見せに行くの。宗十郎を連れて行くのは単に暇だからだけど。
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure that's all there is to it. She stood tall as if challenging her roommate to oppose her decision. Alice's face was dour as she gazed back. Sojuro's irritation was obvious, as well as he glared at Aoko. Of course, their unspoken objection had no effect on Aoko in the slightest.
それじゃあ班になったら出かけるからね。
Having said all she wanted, Aoko disappeared from the room once again. Alice and Sojuro could only sit in dumbfounded silence.
アリス、青崎の家って遠いのか?
Can't be that far. He stared at the clock as he spoke. There was only 10 minutes to go until half past the hour.
場所的には三崎市の端よ。ここから電車で4駅分下った小さな山の中にあるわ。
Gross.
あなたの住んでいたところに比べれば丘でしょうけど。
Her expression had not changed, but her voice made it obvious she was in a poor mood. His complete obliviousness to the fact only showed how clueless he truly was.
そっか。今から行ったら帰ってくるのは明日になるね。
帰ってこられたらの話だけど。
Each spoke to themselves as if there was no one else in the room. Those about to embark on a journey always feel a sense of dread, and he was no exception.
青崎の家ってお化けでも出るのか?
Alice did not say anything in response. All she did was raise her eyes from her teacup and stare wordlessly at him.
アリス?
His question caused her to suddenly avert her eyes. Something seemed off about her today. The minute hand on the clock was about to reach 30. Bothered as he was by Alice's odd behavior, Sojuro had no choice but to stand up from the sofa and take his leave.
それじゃあ行ってくるよ。
Sojuro heard. I said that weird. Completely threw off my cadence. Sojuro hurried through the drawing room. Alice kept staring at his back until he was gone. By the time he had changed in his room and returned to the foyer, Aoko was already waiting and ready to go. Furthermore, Alice was at her side, and they were deep in conversation. She abruptly ended their chat as soon as he descended the stairs.
それじゃあ行きましょうか。アリス、留守番よろしくね。
She responded with a simple nod. There was determination in Aoko's steps as she strode to the door. Sojuro made to follow her as he donned his coat in the foyer.
ほら、ぐずぐずしない。
Her words made him pick up his pace, but he stopped suddenly, as if he had just remembered something. He looked back at Alice as if to say he had left the heater on in his room or some other important matter.
それじゃあ行ってくる。できるだけ早めに帰ってくるから、寝ないで待ってるんだぞ、アリス。
Yeah, no sleeping on the floor. Alice blinked in shock at his unexpected request. Aoko looked on with arms folded as Sojuro stood, waiting for a response. Bewildered, Alice finally returned to the drawing room without uttering a single word. Her only response had been the very smallest of nods. They were headed for Akikoshiro train station. I don't know the emphasis to put on the syllables there. The night had grown late. It was nearly 11 o'clock. A train full of tourists went by in the opposite direction before the two finally arrived at the tiny station. The surrounding area was incredibly dark and quiet. In fact, it felt less like a station and more like a small boat dock. Sojuro had a hard time imagining that many people came here even during the day. Well, it had only the absolute bare minimum necessary. Ooh, let's just try that whole thing over again. It had only the absolute bare minimum necessary to greet the odd visitor. There were no convenience stores in sight, only fields and street lights that dotted the roads. Well, if it has street lights, it's fucking better than most of the places where I grew up. Aoko placed her ticket in front of the attendant, who sat sleeping at his chair, and skimmed the train schedule. The last and only train back departed just after midnight. After confirming her options, she headed hastily out of the station. The elderly station attendant was all alone. He had dozed off with both the heater and television still turned on. As he slept, his face looked completely content. The night felt vast in its darkness. The small train station had been rendered obsolete now that cars were commonplace. It was like a lone star shining in the night sky. Sojuro thanked the attendant for his service before stepping out into the darkness. The man must have looked after the station for decades at this point, and would likely continue until the day he died. Not the worst gig. Outside the station, there was little in the way of human development. It could scarcely be called a village. There was not even an area out front for cars or buses to drop people off. Their eyes were only met with a panorama of flat fields interlaced with lattices and with a lattice of footpaths. Though surely a sea of beautiful green in the summer, in the winter it was more like a wasteland. However, electric lights that felt strangely out of place illuminated one side of the dark vista. The cold only grew harsher as the night wore on. It relentlessly snatched all sensation from the fingertips. Aoko thus kept her hands in her pockets as she strode through the paths among the fields. Among us? I'm sorry. She could feel the ground beneath her shoes. I just completely made up the last half of that sentence. She could feel the ground below through her shoes. Its softness was unlike that of the city, and for her it brought back countless memories. She had walked this path every day in middle school, after all.
あの山の真ん中あたり、家の明かりが見えるでしょ? あれがうち。
Not really. You mean like the one to the left kind of there? Like about, if you divide the screen into thirds, vertically, kind of, and we're going to the left, if we're going left to right, it would be at the end of the first third. That one? She pointed at a mountain that rose up before them with her finger. The journey looked like it would take about 40 minutes on foot. For now, they remained among the rice fields, though their journey would continue beyond them. Aoko followed the path bathed in light without looking back. The path seemed to hang before them like a pier leading out into the darkness of the ocean. The closer they got to the mountain, the darker it became. All signs of the hustle and bustle of human life were absent. The dark stillness made the moon overhead seem dazzling. Its light transformed the mountain path from blackness into mere shadow. Though dark, their surroundings were not totally indiscernible. A seemingly unending path stretched on and on. Sojuro, doing his best to match Aoko's pace, stole a momentary glance at the profile of her face. Did she not feel frightened in this quiet darkness, even with the moon to light the way? Her expression showed no outward signs of discomfort as she strode on in silence. In fact, this was how she always looked when she was trying to act tough. He had only had a month's experience with her, but he knew that much. There was obviously something on her mind she couldn't ignore, no matter how small it might be.
青崎でもこういうところは怖いのかい？
Are you scared? She responded to his tentative question with a surprised nod.
こんな夜道を怖がらない人なんて普通いないでしょ？
Not really. You know, big open fields. It's worse in the forest. Like, God, like real dark. Like the running path I go to. Like last summer, I went there at like 4 in the morning because I was up. And, you know, I'm like, the sun will be up eventually. But fucking running through like the complete dark with only like my flashlight. Fuck, dude, that's like, it really gets like your fucking senses on edge.
我慢できるか無視できるかの2つだけよ。そのどちらもできない人は夜に出歩かないわ。
なるほど。それじゃあどうして自分を連れてきたんだ？
言わなかった？こんな何もない道を一人で歩くのは時間の無駄でしょ？退屈しのぎに話し相手が欲しかったの。
そういえばそんなことを言ってたな。
Sojuro fell into silence. He was not bothered by what she'd said. Rather, he was desperately searching for something to say in response. Their path through the night continued onward. Only the sound of the footsteps could be heard. Eventually, Aoko was unable to endure the silence any longer despite her best efforts.
宗十郎、退屈しのぎに何か話してよ。
参ったな。話すようなことはないんだけど。
He felt clueless and ashamed. He had been searching unsuccessfully for a topic throughout their awkward silence. Shocked though she was, Aoko let out a gentle sigh. At least for a moment, his simple earnestness was enough to make her forget all about her troubles.
バカね。嘘でも何でもいいから、とにかく話をすればいいの。別に面白い話なんて期待してないから。
Her blunt retort was not entirely honest. She would surely scold him if he dared lie to her. Sojuro said as much, reminding her of how she had claimed to hate lies. Naturally, she did not bother to respond to him.
仕方ない。話はないけど聞きたいことならあった。何でもいいならそれもいいだろ。
Shoot. A slight scowl crossed her face at his suggestion, but it lasted only a moment before she returned to her previous calm state.
ま、それもいいか。どうせもうすぐ忘れるんだから。
She muttered her reply without making eye contact. Their destination in the mountains remained hidden from them, revealing not even a hint of its form. It had bothered him since that night. What was the truth behind it all, and how would the two sisters' drama unfold? Sojuro ventured to press Aoko for
そ
details.
れでトウコさんは何がしたかったんだ？
あれ、言わなかった？私への復讐と根源に接触することだって。
That was secondary. It seemed more like Toko was just like fucking lashing out.
根源の渦については前に少しだけ話したでしょ。
確か魔術の源だっけ？
Yeah, the origin.
そう。そして最終目的でもあるわ。根源の渦っていうのは全ての英知が記録された位置、全ての事柄が決定された場所、そこを見て触れて理解できれば不可能なんて言葉すら作り変えられる。伝承によって呼び名は様々だけど、要するに神様のいる位置なんでしょうね。
It's like that chapter of Berserk that isn't canon anymore, where Griffith fucking reached like the god heart or whatever.
神様っていうのは八百万的なものじゃなく、
It's more abstract.
たまにそういうこと言い出すから厄介よね。
Don't think too hard about it.
そりゃ万象に宿る神様もいるでしょうけど、これはその前、そういうのを決めた大前提みたいなものよ。そんなものの入り口がどうして岬にあったのかは知らないけど、祖父はそれを発見して新しい魔法を作り出した。
Oh, it's just here?
でもその後に根源への道を閉ざしちゃったのよ。魔法さえ成立したのなら神様への道は消えるべきだって。
Well, fairly responsible of him, I guess.
多分私たちが生きてる限り解放する気はなくて、トーコはそれが腹立たしかったんだと思う。たとえ力不足で取り込まれても道があるのなら試すべきだ。自己の消滅を恐れるぐらいならそもそも魔術なんて学ばなかったってね。でも祖父は礎になろうとする一切認めなかった。もっと強力な跡継ぎが生まれるまで根源の解析は許可しない。跡継ぎに魔法を譲るけれど根源への道だけを閉ざしていたのよ。
Fairly understandable.
トーコの気持ちもわかるけど私は祖父に賛成だわ。
Same.
根源なんてものに興味はないし、第一今まで一人も生還者がいないんだもの。それが本当に神々の座なのか保証もないし。
Her mood had gradually soured as she spoke, and towards the end it sounded more like a list of complaints. Despite her words, however, part of Aoko was unable to agree completely with her grandfather's decision. Sojuro took note and followed up with a question about something he found strange.
青崎、一人も生還者がいないってどういうことだ？
Well, you can't touch the root.
根源に触れて帰ってきた者は一人もいないの。世界規模でね。
If my understanding of like how magic works, it's like you reach the destination, but then it's like refusing it, and then you leave and you come back with magic.
触れれば即消滅。人間程度の魂だと触れた瞬間に元に戻るとか根源に取り込まれるとか。
Okay, so it's like a big water droplet, and then like a little one, like when it gets close, just like the surface tension just bloop, and just gets absorbed.
なんで
Gotcha.
どんなに歴史に名を残した魔術師でもあれにだけは触れていないわ。せいぜい間近にして大急ぎで自分の魔術を安定させた程度だもん。
Sojuro furrowed his brow at the oddness of it all.
それじゃあどうしてそこがそういう場所だってわかるんだ？
Well, they don't touch it, they just come back.
そりゃ中に入って伝えた人がいたからでしょ。
でも生還者はいないって。
だからそういう人たちは中で神様にでもなっちゃったんじゃない？
She spoke very matter-of-factly, as if it was only a minor detail about something that had happened the other day.
そうなればこっちに帰ってくる必要はないでしょうし、もしかすると単に帰ってこられないだけかもね。ま、神様って位置づけが私たちが思っているようなものとは思えないから、あまり幸福そうには思えないけど。
Becoming one with the universe sounds like a lot of mundanity involved. Whether they succeed or fail in their endeavor, those who reach the root become unable to return to the normal world. Maybe the first person to become God felt lonely and spread the word about the swirl of the root in order to have others join them there. Maybe they had so much work to do as God that they just needed some help. None of it really made sense, no matter how long Sojuro thought about it.
トウコさんは
It's
そうなり
magic,
た
I
か
don't
った
gotta
のかな
explain shit, bud. Just smile and nod. Makes things easier.
まさかあの人は単に知りたかっただけよ。その後に残された人たちのことなんて興味はないの。昔から目標に没頭しても成果を愛する人じゃなかったから。
Yeah, that sounds like Toko.
正直なところそのあたり姉貴は突き抜けてるわ。本当の天才ってのはああいう非人間のこと言うのよ。苦労して作り上げたもののその後を全く考えないんだから。
Sojuro wasn't sure whether she spoke out of disgust or respect.
でもそのくせ面倒見はいいっていうか、未来のことは考えないのに今あるものには何にでも興味を持つんだから。
Aoko praised her sister's genius, even while cursing her every being. Though her tone of voice was perfectly pleasant and lacked any audible animosity.
そうだね。それにトウコさんはこっちの方が好きみたいだったから。
She seems to have a soft spot for nice fools. As soon as he spoke, he was struck by the meaning of Aoko's earlier words. I don't really care about the root. he realized that she must feel the same way as Toko. And so, there was one thing that had been bothering Sojuro regarding Toko.
そういえばカエルにするって一体
He ventured to bring up the topic no one had been talking about since it occurred. It always seemed taboo to bring up, so the sense of transgression made him hesitate as he finally sought the truth.
一体も何も言葉通りの意味だけど
Ribbit ribbit.
もともとルーン使いには変身術がある分トーコにはかかりやすかったみたいよ
いやそんな当然のように言われても
His stomach hurt from the stress of not knowing how to respond to her cavalier attitude.
まあそれでどうやって
Sure. Did not particularly want to ask, but it was the natural extension of his current line of inquiry. Aoko stared straight ahead as she lectured him, completely ignoring the pained expression on his face.
2種類あって精神を入れ替えるのか肉体を再編成するかね
Yeah, don't go taking people's minds and putting them into other things, specifically inanimate objects or trees. Looking at you, Linesburg.
精神だけを入れ替えるのは簡単な分すぐ元に戻れるわ夢を見ているようなものだしちょっとしたショックで元の体に意識が戻ってくれるから厄介なのは肉体そのものを変えてしまう方でこの場合術が切れるまで元に戻るのは難しいでしょうね私がやったのはその再編成の方みたい
Okay.
多分塩基配列を組み替えるんだろうけど
Ugh.
もうちんぷんかんぷん魔術が科学的な説明するのもナンセンスだし
Fair. Aoko spoke as if it were not her own actions she were discussing. Apparently, she'd only been borrowing magecraft from her future self and could not use any of it in the present. Her actions had also created a looming threat that would come back to haunt them in 10 years' time. Trying to comprehend even a fraction of all the intricacies involved made Sojuro's head hurt.
あと数年後には青崎はそんなこともできるのか
Yeah, scary to think about.
末恐ろしい
Better watch your back. Sojuro was being completely honest with her. In response, Aoko only stared ahead blankly, eyes open wide. She looked like she wanted to scold him.
アリスならそれぐらい今でもできるわよ
なんだと
Is it really that surprising?
そんなことだと思ってたわ前にも言ったでしょアリスの部屋のもろもろの人形はあの子に逆らった執事たちの慣れの果てなんだから
まさかアリスはそんなことしないぞ
Yeah, I don't know about that, bud. Why don't you ask her about it when you get home?
いやいやこれが私もね付き合い始めて半年はそう思ってたんだけどね
The light, cheerful laughter that followed only made her statement all the more chilling.
青崎その冗談笑えないぞ
あら私は笑わせる気なんてこれっぽっちもないんだけど
She was clearly making fun of him at this point. Unable to determine how serious to take what she had said, Sojuro's mood and expression only grew darker. His obvious dejection made Aoko smile with satisfaction.
あそこであんたの言葉にうなずいちゃうあの子がそこまで魔女になれるはずもないんだけど
She gazed at him as they walked, her chest warm with emotion. The path they strode had shifted from footpaths through rice fields into a road climbing the mountain. It was surprisingly wide given the mountain's small size, though there was no shortage of trees on either side. The forest road led them up to the top of the mountain. Wheel marks were etched into the dirt underfoot. No doubt Ozaki's family came through here by car. The only light at the summit was that of the moon and stars overhead. The bald mountain top lacked streetlights and houses as well as vegetation. Near the top, The incline of the path began to even out. The road ended abruptly at a house, still a good way away before them. It was too far to make out the shape of the building, but Sojuro assumed it was the Aozaki house based on the warm light coming from the windows.
ところで、君が家で団らんしている間、自分は何をしていればいいんだろ
Oh, what? You're getting introduced to the family. He had a hard time imagining her engaging in any sort of family bonding time, but with effort he could imagine it must be a joyful time for her. He did not want to ruin that by intruding, which is why he brought up the subject now. If he had to, he would not have minded spending the night camping outside. Her reply was not what he had
う。君は
expected.
うちの離れに行って祖父に会うの。多分そこで今日までの記憶を消されるわ。
She stopped dead in her tracks as she spoke. The frank and open attitude she had shown all night was now gone.
Eh?
Well, it's over, you know? The enemy mage is gone. It's the end, and, you know, it was the original game plan from the start. Sojuro was too shocked to take another step forward. Turned back to look at her, having been walking a little whiles ahead, and realized she was not joking. He stood still, taking in the glaring silence. Naturally, Aoko was the first to resume speaking.
驚かないのね、あなた。
う。いや、驚いたけど。でも、それは初めから決まっていたことだ。
退屈しのぎは本当よ。それとは別に、祖父があなたを連れてこいって言ったの。
Sojuro nodded in acceptance. He was as quiet and unchanging as the night around him, something which Aoko found thoroughly irritating.
それじゃあ行こうか。立っていると寒い。
宗十郎、
Ako's voice stopped him in his tracks just as he was about to resume walking towards her house.
あなたはそれでいいの。記憶を消されるってことは、今までの1ヶ月がなくなるのと同じなのよ。
Sojuro murmured in understanding. The thought of returning to his old self and forgetting about Aoko, Alice, and the mansion altogether felt like giving up a treasure that he had discovered. But he didn't feel like he was unable to let them go either.
確かにそれは嫌だな。青崎と知り合ってからの1ヶ月は楽しかったし、アリスとも約束したばっかりだし。でも、青崎が消えるわけじゃないんだろう。冬休みが終われば、また学校で会えるじゃないか。
Yeah, you guys already were acquainted before all this magical shenanigans happened, so just a fresh start. There was no answer from Aoko. She did not tell him that he was not the only one who would be losing their memory. Intervention by a grandfather would also erase her own memories of Sojuro too. Once it was done, they would most likely never even speak to one another again. Each would become just another random student at school. Even if they did happen to meet by some lucky circumstance, things would not be the same as they were now. She could not deny that a small part of her was going to miss him.
そう。なら行きましょう。
She rationalized her feelings away instead of processing them and set off once more towards the house. Sojuro followed along at her side. It was a matter of several minutes before they reached their destination. She was irritated to see the expression on his face looking exactly the same as it always did. Forgetting their time together was sad for her, if only slightly, but it did not seem to bother him in the least.
そりゃね。平気で自分の腕を叩き折れるやつに、そんな繊細なこと期待していないけど。
Halfway through muttering her complaint, Aoko suddenly remembered. Or rather, she realized something. What the fuck happened to Beowulf? Toko ran off into the woods. And you guys just leave Beo in the fields? Just went home? Something about the one-time werewolf killer before her. And about the mystery of who Sojuro Suzuki really was. The older version of herself that night had had memories and knowledge of Sojuro beyond what she knew now. Something about this seemingly average boy's mistakes. Why he was able to do what he did, and why he was raised in the mountains in the first place. She had always wondered, but never had a chance to ask him about it. Until now. Once her grandfather was through with them, all those questions she had about Sojuro would be gone too. There's no point in asking right before they had their memories erased. But then again, she might as well if she was going to forget everything anyway. It's her only chance to demand an explanation for his contradictory behavior.
待って。私も最後に一つ聞きたいことがある。
Yep, tie up all these loose ends.
あんた、山でどんな生活を送ってたの？
The question stopped him on the spot. She had never seen him make such a pained expression.
つまらないよ、そんな話は。
面白い話は期待してないって言ったでしょ。どうせ私も宗十郎のことは忘れるんだから、それぐらい話してくれてもいいんじゃない？
Her words and demanding gaze caused him to lift his head in surprise.
忘れるって青崎が？
当然よ。あんたが忘れても私が覚えているんじゃ意味がないでしょ。言ってこいで公平じゃない。
Either that or just taking the coward's way out.
なんでそんな顔するの？
Sojuro's hand shot up to cover his mouth in response. No idea what kind of look he had been giving her, but he had a feeling it had been pretty pathetic.
そうか。青崎も忘れるのか。そこまでは考えていなかった。
ええ。そして私はあなたとは会わなくなる。断定はできないけど、まず間違いなくね。
Thus, this would be their last conversation. The way she spoke made it obvious even if he had not been aware of what awaited him inside. Sojuro might see her walk by at school and feel a desire to talk, but they would have no reason to interact. Even if he tried to strike up a conversation, he knew she would not be the type to bother much with other people. More importantly, he was not the type to strike up conversations in the first place. Not the way he had been a month ago, at least. That was when he finally realized how cruel it can be to forget something. Not only would he forget what they had done together, he would not so much as know her name or even be aware that she existed. Even if he felt strangely drawn to her, he would never understand why. And despite the fact that if some lucky twist of fate brought them together, things would never be the same. The walk that night was no less than a funeral for the both of them. He would essentially kill the person he knew as Aoko Ozaki, and she would kill the person she knew as Sojuro Suzuki. Afterwards, nothing would remain.
だからその前に聞いておきたいの。嫌だって言うなら、あとはこのまま家まで直行するだけだけど。
それは寂しいな。くだらない話だけど、会話がないよりはマシだろ。
Muttering under his breath, Sojuro set off towards the house once again. This time it was Aoko who matched his pace. There were only minutes before their path came to its end. The cold air turned their breath into white puffs and hung frozen in the dark night. Looking back on their conversation later, Aoko would think it seemed more of a confession than anything else. For Sojuro, however, it was like one long, poorly told fairy tale.
山での暮らしは別にどうということはない。毎日同じことを繰り返して毎日同じことを教えられた。そこでは明日はないんだ。始まりが朝で夜になれば終わる。一日は次の日にはつながらない。だから明日を夢見ることもない。次の日を楽しみにするなんて言葉はこっちに来てから知った感覚だったな。初めは馴染めなかったし馴染む気もなかったけど、みんながまた明日と満足そうに口にする。
Sojuro kept walking as he spoke. He stared straight ahead as if telling his story to the night itself, not once turning to face Aoko. For her part, Aoko was utterly silent. She knew it was pointless to so much as nod or ask a
目が
question.
覚めていつもの一日に戻ってふと気がつくと昨日までいた誰かがいない。訪ねてみると夜に体調を崩したらしい。たまにね、眠れなくなって家から出て行ってそれっきりな人もいたんだ。見なくなってしばらくした後、崖の下で見覚えのある遺体を見つけたこともあった。今にして思うとそれは異常なことだ。集まって暮らしていればそんなことにはならなかったのに、自分たちは関わらなかった。一日で完結する世界だったから他人は必要じゃなかったのかもしれない。
What, just brush it off as like, well, that's unfortunate, but you know, things happen.
山では食べるものも少なかった。飢えないためには他の人が寄りつけない場所に行くことが多くなる。その途中の道でいなくなってしまう人も多かった。山では誰も他人から奪うことを考えなかった。口にできるものを探すとき、気を配る相手は犬だの熊だのだけで人を気にすることはなかったんだよ。
I mean,
今
still,
はその
watch out
逆に
for
なりつ
street
つあるけ
dogs.
ど、ともかく生活の半分はそれだけで済んでいた。
Sojuro continued to stare straight ahead. He did not seem troubled by his memories. Tako's ears sounded like he was describing a place no one in the right minds would want to live as if it was perfectly normal, almost as if he had missed it. But from that point of view, slowly began to show more signs of distress as he spoke.
もう半分はまあ身を守る手段を教わっていた。学校の授業に比べたら些細なことだ。単に自分の体はどう動くものなのか、生き物はどう動くものなのかをよく見て、よく単純な反復運動だ。小石を蹴ったり森の中にこもったり、まあそんな意味合いのことをやっていたんだ。あの決まり事が始まると朝も夜もなかった。外の変化に気持ちを向ける余裕はなくて、ふと気がつくと随分長く食事をしていないなんてのもザラだった。
Oh, it's like that when I'm playing a long game of Civilization or Crusader Kings. Just like, oh, there goes 16 hours so I can eat all day.
そういうのの後はあれが何のためだったのかは今でもわからない。ただ山で暮らしていくには役に立ったし、そもそもあれだって生活の一部だった。
Well, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions, but sounds vaguely similar to another character we know who's real good at punching things.
生きるってことはそうすることだって思ってた。こうやって
In
息
a
をして歩
different
くた
time,
めに
different
は
place.
あの繰り返しは当然のものだったんだ。
宗十郎、それは。
His tone was totally indifferent, but the strangeness of it all forced Aoko to interject. He glanced at Aoko and nodded as if to show he knew what she was thinking.
何かがおかしかったんだろう。あれは身を守る知恵じゃなくて、もっと違う用途のものだった。たまにいなくなる知り合いは山の土になったんじゃなくて、他の場所で他の理由で消えた場合もあったんだろう。でも考えることさえなかった。精神の隙間を知れだの、命の勝ち負けを知れだの、意味を汲み取らないまま鵜呑みにして当然のように繰り返した。それがどう評価されるものなのか俺にはわからない。ただ知らなければ、外のことなんて知らなければ悩むことなく自分はそこに居続けられたと思う。
But how did you learn?
あなたの嫌いな生き死にの真似を続けて。
I mean, we still haven't really got around to the big question of why'd you even fucking show up here? He did not respond to her question. From then on, they continued walking in silence. Aoko could not stop thinking about all the contradictions and absurdities in what he had said. The imbalance in his education, for one. His knowledge of the basics of human life was thorough, yet he knew next to nothing about modern technology. He always said he was not good at socializing, but he seemed accustomed to talking and discussion. His upbringing could not have happened that way by chance. It was almost certainly an environment purposely constructed according to play by some third party. according to a play. Okay. Aoko had no idea what that plan could be or who the third party was, though. Why would anyone want to create someone with a background like Sojuro's? Was it all part of a grander plan? Or was there really a place deep in the mountains where it was normal to live like that? He had asked about this once in his home in the mountains, apparently. When he expressed his confusion, an elder had taken him aside, saying, "This is just how things have always been around here, boy. There's no reason to keep doing it, but there's no reason to stop." With a laugh, the elder chose a new identity and life outside the mountains for young Sojuro and sent him off on his own. Just that simple. Like, if you know, you don't want to? Okay, cool. Or, like, if you want to experience something else, sure. Ako's home loomed at the end of their path. It was a generic home without any real distinguishing features. It seemed as if a house from town had been picked up and dropped here. One could imagine the residents were peaceful people who engaged in farming and raising animals in their spare time. Gazing at what lay before him, Sojuro finally opened his mouth to answer Aoko's earlier question.
自分にはできなかった。知らなければよかったのに知ってしまったから。その後は簡単だ。泣けない鳥はいらないと言われた。今まで疑いもなくできたことを意味を知っただけでできなくなったものはいらないと。どんなに山にいたくてもできないのなら意味がない。俺は意味を知った瞬間に意味を信じることができなくなった。だから山を降りたんだ。けれど、どうなんだろう。そこではそうすることだけが全てだった。そうすることだけしか教えられなかった。だから。
There had only been one problem with his life in the mountains. Him for having questioned it. It was all his mistake. He muttered as much to himself, his voice dripping with criticism. In Ako's opinion, the world he described was, in a sense, perfect. The best situation to achieve a goal is one in which all elements extraneous to that goal have been removed. As long as the people involved had no concept of morality, they will consider the immoral to be completely correct. No, even such correctness would be a foreign concept. Only one thing was for sure. The world in which he had come from was frozen in time. That was what made Sojuro's tragedy possible. A world of wrongdoing and mistakes had created a human riddled with mistakes as well. Sojuro understood that it was wrong, and yet he still thought it beautiful even now. Regardless of what the truth behind it might have been, he considered that world perfect. He only blamed himself for having learned what existed outside that world. He himself had said he could still be living there happily. There were a lot of H words in that sentence.
知らなければよかったのに。
He surely felt the weight of the sinful words he spoke more deeply than anyone else. That's why he still wondered, what had gone awry? Whose fault was it really? He did not want to answer these questions alone. He wanted her to state it clearly for him. There was a moment of silence that he felt like an eternity before she spoke.
私には答えられないわ。
Her reply came quietly. It was not that she did not have an answer. It was that she could not tell him. It was a struggle for her to tell such a bold-faced lie. He reflected deeply on what she said. He knew right away that her words were coming from a place of kindness.
そうだな。君の最初の優しさが今でよかった。
A pleasant look floated across his face, at which Aoko could only scowl.
何よそれ。まるで普段から優しくないみたいじゃない。
青崎は優しくないじゃないか。
Fair. She found herself unable to offer any protest against such a blunt statement. It was because she knew he was correct.
そうね。 優しくなんかないわね。
Sojuro smiled in response to her vaguely sad consent, as if saying, "Told you so." His indulgent smirk arose from his sense of personal pride in the situation. It was both warm-hearted and uncomfortable, causing Aoko to instantly regret her question. If only she had asked about something else, something random that did not matter, then she would never have ended up in a mood like this. Only a few minutes remained until their path came to an end. Surrounded by a wooden fence, the house resembled an inn for passing travelers in winter. The light spilled out from the window brought to mind images of a lively dinner table, quite the opposite of the current mood between the two.
ごめん、悪いこと聞いちゃって。
Aoko stopped at the entrance to the yard. She had felt compelled to apologize, even though it was the last time they would speak, or perhaps because it was the last time. Sojuro's only response was to shrug it off as if it were no problem.
話途中なのにね。
He looked up at the house they had hiked so far to reach, his breath hanging white in the air. All signs of gloom were gone from Sojuro's face as he nodded.
自分も話してみてようやく振り向けたと思う。だから青崎には感謝してるよ。それにこれはもう終わったことだ。続きを話すのはまた機会があった時にしよう。
He turned his head to face Aoko with an ephemeral smile. He was his usual, nonchalant self, the same as every other day. Aoko prayed that day would never come, for her own peace of mind, but also for the well-being of this very unique boy.
もっとも、そんな機会はもう来ないか。
Then she pointed in the direction of a cave hidden by a small forest on the other side of the house.
あそこ、ちょっとした洞穴があるの。そこに祖父がいるから。本当はもっと違った話が聞きたかったけど、仕方ないか。魔法は12時になると切れちゃうものだしね。
A sarcastic grin spread across her face as she spoke. And so Sojuro walked off, totally clueless as to what fairy tale she was referencing. The forest felt so far from the small house to Aoko that it was like a different space like a different space on Earth altogether. In reality, it wasn't that far at all, only 5 minutes away.
さよなら、しずきくん。
She said to herself as she watched him simply walk away without turning back. Though he wasn't meant to hear her words of parting, they apparently reached his ears anyway.
じゃあまた明日町のどこかで。
Yeah, he's got good hearing, you know, he hasn't been fucking blasting rock music in his ears like you, Aoko. He raised his hand in farewell and then disappeared into the forest. Soon as she was sure he was gone, she turned her gaze to the sky. That night, the stars were even more beautiful than the moon. He had been looking at her fondly only moments before, but now he was gone into a forest with only a brief word of parting. Did not feel real. And with that, she finally understood, if a little too late to matter. She understood who had truly been the strange and unusual one. Anyone could have ended up behaving like Sojuro, but not many could keep talking on and on the way he did. Everything he had done was now perfectly sensible in light of his former life in the mountains. As a magician, she was supposed to make miracles happen. But he had arrived at a miracle of his own through the trials and tribulations of following what he considered to be common sense.
素手で熊を倒すなんて、私にはどう転んでもできないし。
It was pretty impressive. Sojuro's own magic was so mundane to him that it made him depressed to talk about. But even so, it was the kind of brilliance only possessed by humans. She pulled her eyes back down from the starry sky and began to walk. Lights were on inside the entrance and the door was unlocked. Aoko rolled up her sleeves and checked the time. 1 hour left till midnight. She had just barely managed to satisfy her parents' request to visit before the end of the year. Placing her hand on the door, she took a deep breath. She promptly stifled the faint affection and sadness she had been feeling. It was her first time back in 2 years. Upon entering high school, she had begun living on her own, hence the past 2 years away from home. And how they flew by. For some reason, the memories began to race through her mind. There she stood, one hand on the door, reflecting on the past. Once the door was open, she'd be staring at her future instead. Her hand holding the doorknob began to move. She was met with the warm scene she expected, though strangely different than that of her memories. It was comfortable to encounter something familiar after being away for so long. And so it was with small, unspoken gratitude that Aoko returned to her home. Without stopping to ring the doorbell, she called out with a smile, "I'm home!" Ooh, spooky mage cave with nice books. But with that, that's right, that is where we're going to end it here for today. And leave us on a nice little cliffhanger there. So once again, I will thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. See you all next time for the next episode of Mahoyo, which might be the last one? Question mark? There might be one or two parts left. I know we're getting towards the end. If going by the little archive bookshelf, there's any indication, there's only a couple more spots open. So yeah. Catch you guys all later. Bye. I'm tired. I'm gonna have some breakfast. I haven't eaten yet, and I'm like, it's really starting to affect my brain.